Okay, welcome to this tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how I created these mushrooms. You will learn a technique where you can control the motion of the mushroom with a KineFX rig. And we will recreate the mushroom scene, the red mushroom scene from scratch. So let's jump right into it. Okay, at first I want to change the compositing settings like to 25 frames per second. I don't know why, but I love this format. For me, it's easier to calculate. So we go with 300 frames. We change that to play once and toggle that on, the real-time toggle. Then I want to enable the grid, and I start by drawing down a geometry container, call it setup, and let's just dive in. So we start off by a curve. We're gonna draw that curve from the side, let's say right, and this will be the outline of our mushroom head. And we can later on manipulate it by using the KineFX. So hit enter and draw a curve. I simply will, I don't know, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're gonna change that later anyways. But for now, we have this simple setup. So it's looking like 1/2 of the mushroom head. We're gonna use a revolve node later to get the full geometry out of it. So first of all, we're gonna resample it, and what I just did, this is really important, just to say it right now. You need to start drawing the curve from the top to the bottom. If you start from the bottom to the top, you're gonna need to change the the order, because this will result in a different result later on in the rig. So we resample that. And on the resample node, we change that to maximum segments. And we can use like, I think 6 segments are enough, because the more segments you have, the more you need to animate later on. But we can even go with 7. 7. Yeah, let's stick with, let's stick with 7. Okay, and create a skeleton for that. And you see here, you have a specific order in which the skeleton bones are directing. And this is important because we need to take a very specific look at the first one. So let's draw down a rig pose for the next step. And inside the rig pose, what you can simply do is, if you go into that mode, you can simply hit, by clicking the points, you will add these points to the rig pose. So let's do that in the right order. And we simply added all these. Cool. And for the first one, we want to override it. And you see, since we overrided it, it's now, I can show you, it was on 0, 0, 0. This is actually what we want, because I show you this right now. If I do something, come on, let's throw down let's say revolve node. Make flat shaded, go into perspective, and you see, if you have something like that, you have a hole, and we want to make sure that on the top side we never get this weird hole. I think on the bottom side it's kind of wane, because we have the stem anyway. But on the top side, we want to make sure we don't have this hole. And also make sure it's always a straight line on the Z-axis. Cool. Let's go into the right viewport and go to override and zero that out. And we want to lock that parameter. Cool. Now we cannot change it anymore in this direction. We can though in this, and we also will. So it's the 0 point is right here. If we throw down a transform node, you see it should be come on. It should be on the 0 point, and that's exactly what we want. So cool, but before that we want to do a few other operations. We want to sample it again, and this time we also go with maximum segments, and the reason is because if we animate it and we keep it on maximum segment length, it's gonna update all the points, and this will result in weird jittering and stuff like that. So we keep it on maximum segments, and we can dial it up to 100. This is looking now a bit weird, but we change it to subdivision curves. And we can also smooth it afterwards. I think it will not change a lot. Yeah, a tiny bit. And now we can actually rework the shape of the mushroom head, which is what I'm gonna do now. The reason is I don't like the shape right now. It looks a bit weird, and also we need a more rotation segments in the revolve. Let's change that right now because I see it and it's bothering me. This looks so much better. We're gonna smooth it anyways afterwards again because I'm gonna add a mountain to it later. But what I want to show you is right now I try to achieve a curve like that. And I also want to add on the bottom side a bit more jagged up line. So let's work on that part. Let's go into the right viewport again. Go into the rig pose, and actually we can change it to something more like that. And I want a very flat top. So it's very, very smooth. And at a certain point it should be like that, I think. Cool, 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 cool. And I want it, let's see, probably, yeah, that looks cool to me. We can go here so we don't have this weird hole on the bottom. And we can rotate it. Let's just zero it out here. Cool. Should I change it here? I think I should. Let's go with that. Probably these all should go more down. I think that is close enough. I mean, we can change it later on. You can also like really lose yourself in these details if you want to. But for now, I stay with that, and I think it's kind of cool. Can go into the perspective, and you see we have a tiny hole here, but yeah, as I said, never mind. We're not gonna see it anyway. So cool. This is how it looks right now. And what I now want to create is, I really love the details in my 3D work, and I want to jag up this line on the bottom. And you can see if you go into the right viewport, it's very, very straight here. But first, organize this a bit. Okay, and then we go. And for this, we use a group. At first, we want to group the specific area down here. And we use a box so we can later on change the parameters down here, divisions, and we still have the same selections. So I really love to do this with a bounding box. It gives you so much more control than just selecting manually the stuff, the points here. I mean, you can, and it's not that much work. I mean, you can always go in and just select it, but I really love doing it with the bounding box. And for this selection, it's okay, but there are more difficult selections where you really want to do with the bounding box because you have so much more control later on. Yeah, just make it a bit bigger, so we have enough space in every direction. Let's go in the right viewport again and see what we got. We need to change it to points, and here into bounding region, bounding object, and it's just selecting this. Let's change that to $OS. That means select the name of the group itself and name it like the node. Name the group like the node, and let's call it mountain group head or something. And then we draw down a mountain sub. So right now it's deforming the whole mushroom and in every direction, and we want to select the group, and you see immediately it just deforming the bottom part, and we also just want to deform it on the y-axis. So right now it's a bit hard, the edge, and although we're gonna subdivide it anyway like this, it's still a bit too hard because in the image, I show you again, it's a very tiny amount of detail you see here. So we need to change the frequency of the mountain to something like, at first the amplitude of course, but also the element size is way too big in my opinion. So we result something like that. Maybe we can even go. Yeah, something like that looks good to me. Pretty dope. Yeah, maybe we can even dial it more down. That looks pretty the same. Yeah, that looks good. Cool, I'm happy with that. So let's throw down a transform again to change later on the pivot point. Good, now let's work on the stem. I simply scaled the head a bit down because it was quite big. If you think of real life scale, I mean, I know Houdini is scaleless, but I just think of 1 as 1 meter, and I think a mushroom is quite smaller than 1 meter. I think something like that should be fine. For the stem, let's create a line. Scale the line down to something like 0.15 and give it quite more points. I mean, we can edit it a tiny bit. Let's do that. Edit maybe Yeah, don't edit the points that are close to the 0, because if you think of a mushroom, then probably the top part will move more than the bottom part. The bottom part will be quite stiff. Yeah, let's edit this a tiny bit and maybe also edit point, not 4 but 2, and maybe in another direction. Not the Y, but come on, maybe here and maybe here minus 0.1. I don't know, something like that. It's maybe a bit extreme, but we're gonna resample it anyways. And here we also will work with maximum segments, and we use 20, and let's subdivide it. Maybe this is still a lot. Let's push it back a bit. Maybe something like that will work. Yeah, we will see it later. Also, you want to give it a slight wiggle. And to do that, I'd like to do a very simple attribute VOP based on the curve view. So the idea is to make it wiggle, but only on the top part, and keep it fairly stiff on the bottom part. This is why I need the curve view attribute. And we can get it here. The curve view basically gives you a gradient. You can see that here. It gives you a gradient based on the length of the spline. And we will manipulate the red part, and the blue part down here will stay the same. So let's turn that off for now. Dive in that attribute VOP. And let's maybe first get a turbulent noise. Come on, based on the position. Dial that into the position. Then we want to output that to the position of the final piece. And what is important here is that it needs to be a 3D noise. Otherwise, you will just push it into one direction, as you can see here, which is weird. And we want to have it, of course, as a 3D noise. And we want to multiply that noise by the curve view attributes. So we bind the curve view and we'll ramp that so we have more control where it is stiff and where it's not stiff. And we multiply that by this value, and let's see what we got. This is looking quite weird. So we take the original position as well, and we add it to the new noise, and this should give us a better result. Yeah, let's maybe promote all these. I know there's a key where you can promote all parameters at once, but I don't know where right now. However, we should have all the parameters here now, and we want to animate it, and we offset it by $FF divided by 100. Let's see how it looks. Oh, that's quite fast. I think we need to change the amplitude and also the roughness, so dial that back to something like that. And the roughness. This is already looking better. Okay, and we wanna now change the amount, how hard it is being affected on the bottom part. Okay, I think it's the other way around. Yeah, there you go. You see, as I push it more inwards, you see the bottom part gets more straightened. If I push it all the way up, yeah, I think I go with something like that. Let's see. And the part on the bottom is quite stiff. That's what I want, and I feel like it's still moving a lot, and I don't want that. Maybe the amplitude is too high. Yeah, it's still moving a bit, but I think more organic now. Cool, that's exactly what I wanted. So it's a bit more frequent, and we can even dial back the amplitude a tiny bit. Yeah, I think this is looking good. And if you wanna make the movement much slower, you just multiply it by 10. Damn, it's way too slow. Let's make it 200. Yeah, it's super slow now. But actually I like it like that. Let's keep it like that for now. Then for the next step, come on. Okay. So for the next step, we need a orient along curve. And then we use the target up vector, which is the y-axis in our case. And what else do we need here? I think that's for now. We just made an y-axis an up vector, which we later on gonna use. Then we need a carve node. This is actually the part where we're gonna animate it, and it's the other way around. So we activate this one, and it should start at 1. I mean at 0, and let's say after 125 it should be at 1. Yeah, why not? Let's see. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool, isn't it? I mean, it's not too fast, but also not too slow. For now, I like the motion. If you want to change the motion, you can hit Shift and middle mouse button, and you can, for example, create something more explosive. So it's boom, and then slowing down. Okay, maybe we can make it even more explosive. You see, it's like boom on the beginning and then slowing down. Can also be cool. Yeah, I mean, I just like to stick with the regular for now. Maybe it could be cool to just, can we push inwards these a bit? Oh, come on. Maybe like that. I think this one can start like that. Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Okay. So keep that for now. Then we gonna use another remesh, resample node. And as always, we work with maximum segments. And for this one, maybe 30, or we can even take more if you want a more smoother motion, because we're gonna scatter now the head on the top of it. And yeah, subdivided, yes. And then we gonna get a group range. So we can simply just get the endpoint. And of course we want to work on points. And right now you see it's like having all these points selected, but we want to only have the endpoint. And right now it's everything selected, but without the endpoint. You see, this one is getting not highlighted when I select it, and we just simply invert the range, and then we have the endpoint. Cool. We can also name that $OS and call it endpoint group. Cool. And what we want to do now is copy that head, copy to points, and we take that endpoint and scatter this over here. Right now it's total chaos because we didn't select the group. Endpoint group. And we have now, if we highlight both, let's just merge it for now and see what we get. You see the head is rotated, which is wrong, of course. We simply fix that by rotating it. And now it should be working quite well. And we can push it a bit down so it actually matches the spline. Maybe go back up a bit. Okay, maybe a tiny bit more. That looks good to me right now. And what I already see is like the head is way too big or the spline is way too tiny. But since we are in Houdini, it's all procedural, and I can simply change it to something that looks good in my case. Maybe that? Maybe a tiny bit more? I think something like that looks good. Cool. So we can later on work. We need to rework a bit the head to get specific groups we can apply shaders to. So if you look at the reference, for example, there are these little orangey lines, and there's this like this very tiny line here underneath of the cap, and I want to get that as well. So we basically gonna create groups for that. But before we work furthermore on the head, let's actually finish the stem, and this is quite easy. We use a sweep node, And for the sweep, we use the round tube. And it's way too big. Let's compare to get a right size. And what I can say, it's not way too big, and I think like even that is too big. Maybe, yeah, let's just check the reference to get a good idea of how thick the stem should be. And I think it is quite thick, but a tiny bit thinner than this. Maybe that looks good. That looks good to me. And what I also like to do is you can see it's barely, I think, but I believe it's a bit thicker on the bottom side than on the top. So we can adjust that by a curve. So if I make that a lot smaller, it looks like that, but we just want to have it a tiny bit. Just like that. Yes. That already looks quite good to me. And what else can we do here? What we really want to do is compute UVs. Let's see actually. I think there are the UVs jumping, which is quite annoying. But I think if we turn off normalize computed UVs, yeah, you see, they kind of stick to it. I mean, they get squished together here on the bottom part, but we animate that anyway, so the stem is not that thick on the beginning, because imagine, I mean, we also animate the head, but on the beginning it should be much thinner, and so you won't see the stem anyway that much. I think the UVs are quite good like that. And we can, I think it's not changing anything if we turn off flip computed UVs. So yeah, let's actually animate it right now. The animation is finished at 125 as I can remember. The carve, yeah. And we can simply change the value here, or we can change the radius here. But if you want to give it a more organic look, you change the value basically here of this and this position, and so you can make it more like a more thinner on the top at the beginning or something. I think that gives it a more unique look. Yeah. So yeah, why the fuck is the rotation here? I don't want the rotation. Okay, so we want this value here on the beginning, and I mean on the end, and we also want this value on the end. So let's see, maybe let's go here to just have a sense. Scale that way down, something like that, and we also want to scale that down to something like that. So it's, yeah, it's growing much better in my opinion. And we can start these values actually from here, so it's more consistent. Whoops. We also want to delete this. Cool. Maybe the bottom part can be finished faster. Let's see, give it a motion like that. Yeah, something like that. I don't want to overshoot it because that will look weird, I think. We can try it, but I think that will look weird. Oh, actually not. I like it. It feels like it's pushing it from down here, and then it gets smaller again. That's quite cool. Didn't expect that. Yeah, it's all about learning and trying stuff. Cool. So what I see now, it's way too edgy or too many sharp edges, so we need a subdivide node to make it more smooth. And we can subdivide it by 2 or even more, I think. Maybe we go even with 3 so it really looks smooth. Cool. I already can identify it as a mushroom. I mean, it's disappearing on frame 1, but we can simply start the animation from frame 2. And what we now need to do is, of course, animate the head. And besides the head, we need to animate these little, I don't know how you call them. I'm not an expert on mushrooms, but you know, these little white dots that are still there. And we also want to have this little skirt thing going on. And I thought maybe of also creating spores coming down. So these are the next steps, and this will be part of the second part of this tutorial. I hope you liked it, and I hope you already learned something. Oh, and of course we're gonna do animate the gills from below. I forgot that. These things here. But yeah, see you in part 2.